Hi, I'm Ed Griffin. I'm the founder of Freedom Force International, and I'm here to do something which I feel very uncomfortable about doing. I've never done this before, so I'm just going to tell you what's on my mind and do the best I can. And what makes me uncomfortable is that I am in a defensive mode. Now, I feel that I have to answer a critic who has been making some statements about me and my work. And this fellow is a guy I've supported in the past, and one of my famous mantras in this movement is let's not be divided, let's not criticize each other. If you disagree with someone, okay, let it go. Let's work together on the things that we share in common. But this is different. Looks to me like it's a full-scale attack. Let's put it in the word that I think is correct. It's a full-scale attack on something that we're doing that I consider to be very important, and that is we're sponsoring a meeting in Phoenix, Arizona, to be held in December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of this year, 2016. Global warming, an inconvenient lie. And that tells you exactly what it's all about, and many people watching this video will understand and relate to why we're doing this, because I personally and many of my associates are firmly convinced that this global warming theory is not just a false theory, but is definitely a lie, and it's a lie because there's an agenda, and we want to expose that agenda. And the agenda is not to protect the planet, but to enhance the financial and power structure of the people promoting the myth. So it's a controversial issue, of course, but you don't expect when you get into something like this to be blindsided by someone who you think has always been on your side of these issues. Well, that has actually happened, and I would normally let it go, except that Dane Wigington, who is the person I'm talking about, is a very well-known and highly respected person in the anti-geoengineering community, and I have always supported his work as well. So, to make a long story short, or a little shorter anyway, all of a sudden I find that after we announced our intent to put on this meeting in Phoenix, Mr. Wigington was taking the initiative at every opportunity to attack me personally, and especially our meeting and what we're trying to do. It was, I've always known from the beginning that Dane Wigington really did believe firmly, apparently, in what I call the myth of global warming. He never talked too much about it because I think he felt that it might have pulled away a lot of support from people who feel as I do. So, but he's an outspoken person against geoengineering, you know, the chemtrails and the spraying of things in the sky and all that sort of thing. And a lot of people didn't realize that there's a line between those two elements. You can be for one and not for the other. So I've known that Dane Wigington did not support my views on global warming, which was okay. I was willing to work with him on the areas where we did agree. But now he just isn't going to allow that to happen. So he started a barrage of personal attacks against me, which surprised me. So I had to decide, what do I do? Do I just ignore it? I intended to do that at first, but now I'm getting letters from people saying, gee, Mr. Griffin, I thought you were a good guy. How come you're on the wrong side of this issue? Mr. Wigington says this, and Mr. Wigington says that about you. Is this true? So I have no choice, really, but to do something. Dane Wigington came out with a rather long article on his website, which I think is Geoengineering Watch or something like that. You'll find it. It's very prominent. Very good, by the way, in the geoengineering field. And all of a sudden he says that these bad people like me and all these people, these professors and so forth, are coming together, all these nutty fruitcakes who actually don't believe in global warming. He's calling us the global warming deniers and the nutty ones that don't know anything about real science, and making us look pretty bad if you just listen to what he says. So he talks about our upcoming event as something you want to avoid like the plague, you know. And I was looking at that and thinking, well, surely he's going to say something about what we're doing that's wrong. Is he going to try and challenge what we're saying? Is he going to say that we're wrong on some issue? Or how is he going to do this? Well, it turns out that's not what he's doing. He starts attacking people, ad hominem attacks right away. everybody in our program, from Lord Monckton to Professor Ball and all of the academics, he just lumps them up and says, well, they're working for the coal industry, you know. Now he just sloughs it off with no evidence or anything like that. And he says, I'm some kind of a multi-level marketer and these things, but not at all about anything we're trying to say about global warming. So I'm issuing an invitation right now on camera to Dane Wigington if he will come to our event in Phoenix. I guarantee you that we will not edit out any of the debate. I'll be happy to arrange a debate between him and Professor Ball. As I say, if Professor Ball can't do it, I'll find someone else who can. And if I can't find anybody better, I'll take on the task because I think that it might be kind of fun to do that. Anyway, this is nonsense to try and make your case on the fact that somebody won't debate you, when in fact, I don't think that's true at all. One of the things that Dane criticized me was because I made the absurd statement, now two things he said, the absurd statement that the planet appears to be going into a global cooling stage. Now Dane thinks that's absurd, and I'll just rest my case on that. Time will tell, of course. And Dane cites all these articles that come out of the UN and all of the people who have their livelihoods depending on government grants and all that sort of thing. His total source is establishment. The very people he says he's opposing, those are his sources of information, by the way. So I find that interesting. But I think this idea of global cooling now is a very serious issue, and more people are looking at it. More and more scientists are coming on board and saying, absolutely, the sunspots are in a low period, and every time that has happened in history, when the solar activity declines, so does temperature on the Earth. This is a scientific fact, Dane, and how you can find that absurd is a little strange to me. But the other area that Dane thought was absurd for me to say was that there was evidence that the sea levels are not rising around these little islands out in the South Pacific, like we read all the time. All the natives are having to get off their island because the seawater is rising and they're being pushed off because of the melting icebergs and all of that stuff. Very convincing, because you see where the water's coming up and the houses are being washed away. So how can you argue with that? Well, you can, because there's a lot of evidence that the sea is not rising but the islands are sinking. It's a very simple, straightforward proposition that can be tested, Dane. The sea level is rising in some cases, it's lowering in other cases. You know, this water isn't perfectly even, it sloshes around a little bit, and sometimes the slosh takes a long time to move around the planet. And we have articles that describe that, and it's scientific. It doesn't come from my personal experience or expertise, but from scientists around the world. Now we get to the main crux of this thing. When Dane Wigington criticized me for saying that there's evidence that the islands are sinking as opposed to the sea level rising, he sent as proof of his position, his scientific evidence was based on an article that he sent that was published by the Carnegie Department of Global Ecology. Now that's his reference. That's his proof that he's right and I'm wrong. So I thought, well, isn't that interesting? I never heard of the Carnegie Department of Global Ecology. So I looked it up, and I looked up this article. Well, the first thing I see is that the article doesn't say anything really about the scientific evidence of sea level. It's all about how to prepare for rising sea level. It's what do you do about the fact that we all know that the seas are rising and we have to reallocate resources, we have to move communities around, we have to rebuild, we have to create infrastructure, we have to finance all this. There was not a word about the scientific issue that he was criticizing me for. I thought that was kind of interesting. Dane, why would you do that? You're claiming that I'm unscientific and you offer me an economic paper of this issue as proof that your position is right. I thought that was really strange. The only evidence that I always find out that this organization is the very organization which Dane Wigington himself previously has violently condemned. And I have here's an article. It's this right off the internet. It's from Dane Wigington, and it's called Can Caldeira, David Keith, and Carnegie Science: The Face of the Criminal Climate Engineering Cover-Up. Now this is a real vicious attack against the very organization that Dane Wigington is now claiming as his reference, his source, his proof that I was wrong and he was right. And in this article, Dane calls this group the Power Structures Propaganda Machine. That's a direct quote from Dane. And he lists all these people, Ken Caldeira and all these people. He calls them criminals. He calls them the pawns of the establishment. Here's one back here. He said the power structure and the criminals who serve them. This is what he's talking about, the very organization that he now cites as evidence that I am wrong about the sinking islands, and he is right. And he says the Carnegie Science, which has known connections to the defense industry, it goes on and on and on. Now, I'm just going to move along because this gets boring after a while. Now, just to close this off, I'm going to just read some of the headings of these articles that I found easily on the internet. These are scientific papers, most of them, talking about how the islands in the South Pacific are, in fact, sinking. Here's the one, Island Sinking, Story Sunk. And here's another one, The Mystery of the Sinking South Pacific Islands, Moving Tectonic Plates. Now, see, that's the key. I'm sure you recognize, Dane, that there are tectonic plates out there in the South Pacific area, and they're moving. And as they move, some go up, some go down. And if the islands are on the side of the plate that goes under the moving plates, the other plate, then it sinks. It sinks. And the water rises, not because the icebergs are melting, but because the tectonic plates are moving. This is science, Dane, and I suggest you get up to speed on it before you start criticizing anybody who's done their homework on it. Anyway, it goes on. The mystery of the sinking South Sea Islands, the tectonic plates, it's all there. All right, so what does all this come to? I'm doing something I don't like to do, but I have to defend myself. I have to defend the group of people who are with me who feel that global warming is not only a myth, but a lie. And we cannot allow even our friends to make mistakes and start saying that this is not based on science. Time will tell, but time is of the essence. I feel very strongly that now that we've had a major shift in the political scene in the U.S. with a very surprising election result, I think some of this political support that we have seen from the federal government on behalf of the global warming myth will begin to wane. And so I think those who are clinging to the global warming myth are going to have a very hard time in the months ahead. I hope they will, because I'm going to do my best to expose that. So the bottom line is that Dane Wigington presents himself as an objective, scientifically oriented person who's the opponent of geoengineering, but I think what you think you see is not what you get. Thanks for listening.
The Third Congress of Freedom Force will be convened in Phoenix, Arizona on December 3rd and 4th, 2016. Global Warming, an Inconvenient Lie. It is a gathering of the world's top experts on this subject who will put an end, once and for all, to the myth of anthropogenic, man-caused global warming.